I'm in Decatur, Georgia, everybody.
All right, welcome everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Iram Mihal, and I serve as the Assistant Director of Alumni Engagement here at Emory University. Before we get started, we have a few housekeeping announcements for today's session. Please note that the views and opinions expressed in the Learning Development webinars are those of the individual speakers and do not necessarily reflect the official policy, position, or views of Emory University, the Emory Alumni Association, or its affiliates. The content provided in this program is for informational purposes only and should not be construed as an endorsement by Emory University or the Emory Alumni Association. This session is being recorded. Please be sure to keep your microphones muted to avoid disruptions, though we do encourage you to keep your camera on. If you have any questions throughout the session, please feel free to share them in the chat box, and Agnes will be pausing momentarily throughout the presentation to take your questions. And now I am so excited to introduce our featured speaker, Agnes Trinh Mackintosh. Agnes is the founder of Rescripted LLC and is a certified professional coach with over 20 years of experience in coaching, mentoring, launching programs, and entrepreneurship. She earned her BA from the University of Pennsylvania and her MPH from Emory's Rollins School of Public Health. For the past 12 years, her career has focused on learning and development in healthcare, higher education, and technology. In addition to being one of our Emory alumni coaches, Agnes recently joined the coaching congress for CDC University. Once again, please keep your microphones muted. Agnes has also worked with over 600 clients, which translates to over 1,200 coaching conversations. Please help me give a warm welcome to Agnes.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me here today. Iram, thank you so much for the warm welcome. I do want this to be a dialogue engagement throughout. So please, if you have any questions, as Iram suggested, please put them in the chat. I will not be able to see the chat, so Iram's going to help me with that. Okay, so let's get started. Sorry, I'm getting a prompt. Hold on for a second. Okay, sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties here. Sorry, Aaron, hold on for a second. Let's see if it's gonna let me advance this. Okay, there we go. All right, everybody, I always like to start off with a slide. First of all, because it makes me think about not taking myself too seriously, but also to tell you a little bit about my story. I'm the youngest of five. I'm the one in the back there with my mouth hanging wide open. My family came here from Vietnam when I was very little. And so it just, you just never know where life is going to bring you, right? For me, connecting with you today. So, of course, I am probably not shouting, I want to be a career coach, right? Because first of all, I don't think it existed back then, right? But also, I always had a lifelong dream of being a pediatrician, actually, and a teacher. So that was what I started off in life wanting to be. So there to my right, that's my sister Maria. She is, we used to tease her when we were little, where she used to count on her fingers, and we used to tease her all the time. And guess what? She's the CFO of a company right now. And so you just never know, again, where life will take you. Okay. So this is what we're going to cover today, everybody. We're going to go through some of these sections, and there are certain points throughout that there are like obvious points where we could have some questions, probably around the career span part. But really, I want to introduce you to a framework about strategic questioning, and I'll go into that in a little bit. But also, I wanted to point out that after our event, Iram is going to be emailing you all a career strategic question worksheet for career clarity. And that will be like a sampling of questions for you. I will also have a list of curated resources, which I'll go through as well as a takeaway for you. And then, of course, we will talk about like, what is the takeaway from today's talk? Okay. So I'm sure all of you have, when you're talking about career paths, it's always something about a path, a road, or a mountain to climb or something like that. We just really love our analogies like that. But I wanted to get started with this. Oftentimes, as Ira mentioned, I have had over 1,200 coaching sessions, and many clients, when they come to me, sometimes they have been thinking about a career change, maybe 6 months or even 2 years before they come to me. And some of the questions that come up is, where do I start? Does that sound familiar to anybody? Something else that comes up is, I'm at a crossroad, right? And feeling stuck, right? I invite everyone at this point to also, going with the analogy of being on a road and being stuck and everything. What else comes to mind? What are some phrases I want you to share sometimes something that comes to mind when you are going through a career pivot? So, Iram, I can also share too if things are not coming in.
All right, so we have roadblocks, feeling lost,
Yes.
balancing expectations, blind corners.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to get there. Am I growing in my current position, purpose in life, vertical, lateral transition, foggy, unclear, lack of inspiration, where I'm headed. So a lot of unknowns, fear, how to get where I am.
Yeah.
I want to be from where I am.
But yeah, and honestly, everybody, it's the other things that also come up besides roadblock and everything, it's also sometimes feelings of being off schedule or maybe having to like reroute, right? And things that you hadn't planned for. And one of my coachees who's in the healthcare field, she put it really poignantly to me where she said, sometimes I feel like when I come into work, I can do my career for another 20 years. And then there are times when I feel like I can't do it for another 20 minutes. Now, I don't know if that sounds familiar to you, but it does strike a nerve, I think. And so the other thing I would say is, are we there yet? This is something, of course, when we go through life, we have goals for ourselves, accolades we want to achieve, accomplishments. And so that's all like sort of like striving, right? And so at one point, you're going to come to terms with that. And we're going to talk a little bit about that more in like the career span of things. And hopefully the framework that is being introduced today will help you navigate some of that. And of course, because I'm also corny, I like to say that hopefully these will provide road assistance for you. Okay, so these are the types of questions that we're going to go through some today. I was asked to lead a learning moment for a leadership development team. And one of the resources I came across was this Harvard Business Review article. And it was the art of asking smart questions. And so it was they were surveying different business leaders, including Jensen Huang, who is the CEO of NVIDIA, the AI chip maker. And so one of the things they have found were these kind of patterns, or what they call domains of types of questions, right? And really, it's just a way to make better informed decisions, more comprehensive decisions, and more in-depth, and also going a little bit more broadly. And really, these are the types of questions to also make you think, to make sure you don't miss anything. And also, it should also surface other questions for you as well. So I have to tell you, one of my coaches recently, she shared with me that one of the activities she likes to do sometimes with her partner is career building weekends, which, as a career coach, I love it because it warms my heart to hear something like that, right? But she said recently that, she put in Chat GBT a prompt. And one of the things was, what should I do and what resources or templates can I use for career growth in my career now, right? And so it's funny that, what it put together for her was a little template, and it was about self-reflection, performance review, professional development, networking, and goal setting, right? Unfortunately, we can't get to the performance review stuff today, but if you'd like another session, we could talk about that another time. The other thing was the goal setting. That's very individualized, so we won't go through that, but I can share with you collective insights of things that come up, okay? So first of all, I wanted to address their career clarity, right? Sometimes when my coaches come to me, they feel like I'm all over the place. Again, where to start, right? And then what are they aiming for? Clear direction or help with navigating from all over the place to some more clarity, right? And so I have to address that there's so many mixed messages we get in the career space. Everybody, it seems, is in there. We have people like your family wants to say, your partner, school career advisors, recruiters, hiring managers, organizational psychologists, business professors, behavioral economists, which actually I really like what they have to say because they have very concrete steps in their advice, design thinking experts, and even therapists. The other day, I just finished reading a book called Job Therapy, and it was about kind of liking relating your job to relationships. And even Marie Kondo, the guru of organizing your home and does this bring you joy? She teamed up with an organizational psychologist for a book called The Joy of Work book. So I thought that was interesting. And then other areas or other people that chime in is TikTok influencers, people on Instagram, and LinkedIn. Don't get me started with all the LinkedIn listicles of everything you should and shouldn't do for your careers. So am I missing anyone? Feel free to throw it in the chat if I did not exhaust the list. It's just what I'm trying to say is we do have so many people that talk about careers and what you should do, and it can be very confusing, right? So if we don't have any questions, Irma, I'll keep going.
Okay. No, not right now.
Okay. Good. So going back to those 5 domains of the different types of strategic questions, think of investigative as what's known, right? This is the question that will help you identify and analyze problems in depth. It'll help you effectively clarify your purpose, what you want to achieve, and what you need to learn to do so. And these are mostly a succession of why types of questions, although there are also what, I think, in the mix. So the next type of question is speculative. What if? What else? Right? This is also a prompt that is used in improv, if anybody has used that, or in design thinking when you're trying to generate kind of workshop some ideas. So the what if is to help you reframe or broadly explore more creative options to achieve a breadth of potential paths. So next one is, so what? This is the interpretive question. This is the sense-making questions. We're going to go back to this a little bit more later in my presentation. This is to help you redefine core issues and ask what the challenge is really about. So it draws out the implications of an observed idea or an observation, or it's a natural follow-up to each of the questions that are presented. You should always go back to the interpretive. And so let's go next. So the next question is, now what? This is the productive question. I have to tell you, everybody, this is where everybody wants to jump in all the time. Why? Because it's tangible. The things, the resources that you would need. This is like the resume prep. This is the interview prep and practice. These are the things that are easy and more straightforward to think about. But if you skip some of the steps before, the questions before, you may be going down you haven't really exhausted all of your options or even thought about, is this what I really want at this time in my life, right? So lastly, what's unsaid? This is the sort of the emotional part of it. This is where we have a lot of different thoughts in our head and people, again, the mixed messages. This is where, well, this is not a safe career pathway. This is not, this is what I should be doing. This is what my family wants or what other wants. And so this is a lot of the stuff that we have to process. And really, it's a subjective part of questioning. It deals with the substance of the challenge, and it's the personal reservations and frustrations that you may feel that keep you stuck, or it's also keeping you stuck in your comfort zone, but also it could influence, your emotions can influence or your action or perhaps inaction, right? So basically, these are the types of questions when grouped together and when used strategically should help you make a more informed decision. And I wanted to point out one more thing. When we look at clarity, sometimes people want certainty with that, right? But that's not always guaranteed. So we will talk a little bit about, do you feel, what will help you, what types of questions will help you feel like you're moving in the right direction. So, okay, before we get into talking about the questions and how they might be applied across your career, holistically across your career span, I want to point out a few things. I found this Indeed article. It was actually something that I used for when I was giving a talk last year at the Hatchery in partnership with the Emory Young Alumni Association. So if anyone is here from that talk, hello. One of the things I wanted to point out is, look, these are very neat and very delineated age groups, right? But Scott Galloway, who's this NYU marketing professor, he also is a serial entrepreneur. He talks about how your 20s is for workshopping your career, your 30s is for getting good in your field, and your 40s and 50s are for harvesting, which is like reaping what you sow, right? But that does not account into taking time off like I did. That loop that was back in the where you are and where are we there yet? I took a decade detour. I did that 10 years before I've been in the workforce for the past 12 years. So that's part of my career story. So what do you do with that information? And then also, I have to beg to differ with the decline here, the 55 to 65. Maybe that's why they took down the article, because they had too many complaints about that. So really, this is what I want to say. This is a myth-busting thing. You don't be tied to this, okay? Because we all have different, unique needs throughout our careers, and we will not be following this all the time. This is more like a linear progression, and I would say it's also some of our organizations need to catch up to this. There was a recent BCG consultant article where they did a report. It was what job seekers wish that employers knew. And they had surveyed over 90,000 people, like in different career stages. And basically, 69% of the people were interested in finding a stable organization that gave them growth opportunities, right? About 23% wanted to maybe switch careers throughout their lifetime. And a myth buster is that people still want the traditional the traditional day job. Actually, we think that people want side gigs and projects and different things, and some people do. Some people do go down the entrepreneurial route. But for the majority, 75% of the people said they wanted to work for a big organization and learn and grow and maybe have some aspiring leadership positions. And really, the statistic for this is that for our kids, 50% of their roles, if they're in middle school now, have not been invented yet. If you think about it, roles like data scientists didn't exist about 15 years ago. I just saw a role for AI consultant the other day. And so in their lifetime, Gen Z, I have two Gen Zers, a 20 and 22-year-old. I know you're probably asking, oh, she must have had her kids when she was 10. No, I'm joking. But really, for them, the statistic is that they might have 5 to 7 different career paths in their life, and they might have on average 12 different roles and maybe 4 years in a role. And I think HR is catching up to that, where before they might have been considered a flight risk. I really think you're a Renaissance person. You have some broad depth of experience, but also go deeper in some of your expertise. And so some people sometimes ask, like, what exactly is a career path? And I'll give you a definition that I found from BetterUp, which is a coaching platform. And they say a career path is defined as a long-term plan that includes specific steps or tasks that help you advance to a desirable occupation or new role. It typically involves a series of related jobs or roles that provide increasing levels of responsibility, skill development, and possibly higher levels of compensation. Do you like how they said possibly? That's another type of conversation we would have. Okay, so next, let's think again about career span. And if you could, Aram, could you launch a poll here? Now, going back to that myth busting, okay? I today am defining early careers as if you are like in the first 5 years or so. If you're mid-career, it could be 5 plus up to 35, 45 years. My late career, I think about like if you're thinking about not working, like if you were thinking about retirement in like 5 to 10 years from now, that's where my headspace is. Okay. Oh, this is great. Thank you, Erin. I love seeing this because then I kind of see when I see people are either adjusting or adding some more there. It is what I call in mid-career, it's like that marathon and it's a series of sprints, right? So that's what you might be feeling today. Okay. So thank you, Erin.
One question.
Okay.
That's relating to when you were talking about other people's opinions and stuff. So any suggestions on how to focus on the calculated risks needed for growth and tuning out other people's fears and opinions?
I know we're going to actually address hopefully some of that as we go into the career spans. Some of it, it's, you know, going back to those strategic questions too, it's, we won't have certainty, and we're all risk averse, we're all human, we're risk averse, but what will happen is you get to learn to ask better questions and then know who to surround yourself with to help you and, you know, make sense of it. But also there are other ways where you can have like low risk ways where you could potentially, you know, explore different pathways. And we'll talk about that some, okay? And some of it has to do with resources, and some of it has to do with talking to people who are in a potential path that you might be interested in, okay? But I know it is scary. You do have to come up point. The truth is our inner critic is very loud and it keeps us where we are. And that's why I love the book Job Therapy, for instance. That's where we have to at one point think about what we really want and kind of shut out some of the shoulds. And that's where I think talking with people will help navigate that is important. Okay. So let me see. Oh, I think you have to end the poll. Let me see if I can end it before I can advance. Okay. Let me see. It's saying to stop. Should I stop sharing? Let me see if I can advance my slide. Okay. I'm going to close this. Okay.
You should be good to go.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. It is not letting me. Oh, there we go. All right. Does she look familiar to some of you? You might know her, Alexis Ziller. I had permission to use her picture from my last talk. She is the lead for the Emory Alumni Young Association network. So Alexis, if you're on here, I'll give a shout out to you. But so starting up, this is where again, it's an arbitrary delineation, but I would say like in your first 5 years or so, right? You're still figuring out, it might be your first job. You're still figuring out like how, like navigating the world of work. I would say a really good resource at this point is Gork Ng's book called The Unspoken Rules. It's one of the curated resources that I have for you. And he talks about when you're starting up, you're kind of three things that might come up as you're in the work world is like he calls it the 3 C's. They're looking at you are also thinking about competencies and skills, right? Also how you communicate and also your collaboration. So I think the challenge here is you also haven't been exposed to a lot of roles, right? And the other thing is think about it when you were at Emory or even going back before that. When you're K through 12, high school, everything, all the information is pushed to you. It's very structured and you knew where you stood in comparison with others, right? You knew about the grades, what your next goal was, if you wanted further education. Well, now all of that, it just seems like gets a lot more complex, right? Because at this point, you are having to be creative about pulling information from people or in your organization, finding the resources. And so it can get very confusing then. So some of the more like specific strategic questions I would ask myself at this point is how, what's working and what's not? Because sometimes we do find in our roles what we don't like more than we do, right? About that. And how do you gain new skills and experiences for your next move? And what might a pivot look like? What options haven't I considered? And then also going back to what's my timeline for change? Always try to make time-bound decisions if you can. That's what I recommend. And then also, if you're at a point, like going back to, the survey with how many people are looking for big organizations, that may not be in the case. You might be in the other percentage points. But you might ask yourself, what are 5 good organizations that I could get behind or be excited to work for, regardless if they're hiring, right? And then also, I would at this point also think about your values. These are values, and there are certain resources that you can do for like self-assessment. I really like one called truity.com, truity.com. This is where there's like the Myers-Briggs, the 16 personalities. There's things for that will link to like Strengths Finder. There's even the Strengths Finder book. I would get that. It's the Clifton Strengths Finder. And that will I would get the one with the access code. Because then you could take it. And a lot of these things on the truity.com site, their psychometric tests, they will give you a better understanding of your likes, your dislikes, and how you like to work with others. Okay. And some people at work might have access to DISC or Berkman. Those are other types of resources there. Okay. So let's get into this. This is where I think I see a lot of the coaches where they think there's something that is not aligning for them. Something, either their job has changed so much, their industry, or maybe their values and priorities change. And then think about it. This is also the time when you have a lot of conflicting priorities. You might have young kids at home, but the union also might be a caregiver for elder parents. And so this is the time as I mentioned, this is like the middle marathon. And then sometimes it can feel like a series of sprints, right? So this is the point where a lot of what we were talking about, like the emotions, what's unsaid, things that even you would want for your career and you have goals, but maybe you have to shelve it at this time because of other things that come up. A book, one of the resources that we'll go through, and it's on my website too, Bruce Feiler, he talks about life is in the transition. And he talks about how every, 18 months or so, there's a life quake or a work quake. He has a book called The Search on Work. And so what happens is you might have a 5 or 10-year plan, but and every 10 years it might be a bigger quake in your life that upends everything that you had planned out for yourself. So I always say be loosely tied to your plan. Okay. This is important where at this point you are thinking about some people are thinking about aspiring leadership, right? And some coaches that I work with who have managed people want to go the other way. They're like, I've done that. No, thank you. Let me think about other things where maybe I'm just responsible for a program or a project. A lot of people here also think about what are my transferable skills, right? At this point. And I also try to do a strengths-based approach. What are your combined experiences up to this point? And then also doing kind of auditing, like what are the, what am I recognizing as like the trends either in my industry or where I want to pivot to? And doing sort of just thinking about like what are the gaps in skills that you would want to close at this point? So one of the things that in this point also is just making sure that you surround yourself with a support squad. This is where the interpretive questions get really important here. And then also there's some statistics that it might take 6 to 9 months for to find a new role or pivot. Sometimes a pivot at this point, and it depends on how much experience you have and how many things you call your qualifications, it could take up to 3 years. And I don't say that discouragingly, but if you're switching industries, you're switching titles and you want to get to a certain leadership level, that's what I'm talking about there. Okay. So I'm just trying to be realistic about the time frame. And lastly, okay. Oh, and I forgot to mention that's Yabi in the middle there. She's still part of the Emory family, but in a different role. And so the last part, I didn't want to out anybody as slowing down, but I'll just own it. I'm kind of in the last, 5 to 10 year stretch here. And at this point, I would ask myself, like, what would be game changers for you? Sometimes at this point, people don't want to work full time. Maybe what's a reduced work schedule? A lot of times things, and it's not that it doesn't come up in other career stages, but autonomy is very, very important at this point. And then also how to leverage your expertise. And people play, consultant roles at this time. And they also really believe in generativity. That's giving back to the next generation. So really at where we stand in the work world now, everybody, there's about 5 different generations working now, right? And so this is where we are just trying to figure it out. Nobody has it all figured out. If they say they do, they're not. But what does come up is questions about satisfaction. What are your job satisfiers? And also about happiness. And when I think about happiness, for me, I think more about like contentment. Okay. So in saying that, everybody, you may recognize this person. If you don't, her name is Michelle Yeoh. She won the Best Actress Award for her role in Everything Everywhere All at Once, right? So I try to channel my inner Michelle Yeoh, where she said in her speech, ladies, don't ever let anyone tell you you're past your prime. And I want you to think about that at each stage, but especially here. I had to look this up. She was 61 when she gave this speech. And she was breaking, as we say, bamboo ceilings. She was the first Asian woman to receive this award in the 95 years of the Academy Awards. So basically, this is where you have to really embrace your uniqueness, all of the combined experiences that got you to this point, and then also you have to think optimistically. I like to think the best is yet to come. So going back to career growth, this is a definition I found on Life Labs Learning in a workshop that I participated in. And it's growing your skills, your knowledge, and in the green, I took a little bit of liberty. I added experiences and strengths here, as well as your relationships. So again, because I'm corny, I would call it your SCRS development, like a pirate, you know, your SCRS. That's an easy way to remember it. So again, what differentiates you is your unique experiences, your unique combined experiences that no one else will have, and your strengths. These are things that you can talk to someone and ask them, like, what do people come to you for? You know, what do you recognize for? An exercise here might be in, you know, in your life, what are the 5 to 15 accomplishments that you are proud about, whether it's in your work or in volunteering? And what made it? What was your point of pride? Was it, were you working with a team? Were you able to lead something? So that will give you some clues about what you value, but also some of the strengths that show up for you when you're feel like you're performing at your best version of yourself, right? Okay. So I'm doing a little bit of a gear shift to the resources here. Again, Erin will be sharing this after, and that's why, sorry, I put my QR code, and on my site, I actually have a list of more resources. If I were to have done that again, I would have broken it up to early stage, middle careers, and later careers. But honestly, some of this applies to all of it, all the different stages. And so maybe it's good that it's in the mix there. So I wanted to point out for the top left resource that's listed, Christina Vo. I don't know if you know this, but LinkedIn Learning, you can get free through your library. Sometimes people will have it as their learning management system in their organizations. And I know at Emory had it because guess what? At one point it was Linda, now I'm dating myself, it was lynda.com, and it used to be just for Goizueta. BBA or Goizueta school. And then when they relicensed it, it was open to all. So take advantage of it. It's such a great thing. And going back to someone's question about risk aversion and different ways to try things. LinkedIn Learning, if you put in the global navigation essential skills in, there are all these different learning pathways that will come up. Project management, finance, all these things. This is a way to just be introduced to a topic in that, like, you might think a lot of people I work with think about pivoting to project management. And so that's a way that you can test out, look and see if you like the topics. You might really enjoy it. And then, or it might tell you a different thing, right? So I love Adam Grant's. He has a podcast called Rethinking, which I actually was just listening this morning. And he has the episode that I listened to was the one about finding your voice authentically. And he interviews Steve Martin, the multi-talented Steve Martin of Murders in the Building, being plus all the other movies and everything and the banjo playing that he does. But so Steve Martin has been long life friends with someone named Adam Gopnik, who is a writer for the New Yorker. And so they talk about purpose and what they've done throughout their careers. Anything about careers is really, it's what lights me up. So you might enjoy this podcast. And one of the things that really came out for me was Adam Grant says, when you look, he refers to Kierkegaard, who's a philosopher, and he says, life can only be understood backwards, but only lived forward, which is, I think, very poignant. So some of these things, as you're in your mid-career or later career, some of these things are like the patterns and themes that you see in your career. For me, it was coaching, mentoring, again, what Iram introduced me for. And then when I look back, I'm like, you know, in the past 12 years, it was really learning and development is what the theme was in the past 12 years for my career. So I'm not going to go through all of the resources, but I wanted to point out a few more. The top right, there's a 13-minute video by sorry, Ali, I'm mispronouncing his name, Ali Abdal. He actually started off as a physician, and now he would call himself an edutainer. He used to do Khan Academy courses, actually. And I love this because he introduces the book Think Big by Grace Lardon, who's a behavioral economist. And he talks about different things in the book that will help you on your career path and thinking about and kind of sticking to motivation and why people make certain decisions. And so I think that that's a really good resource. And also the Hello Monday, which is a LinkedIn news, or it's a podcast. There's a 3-part series on what makes a good job. I would check that out. That's also listed on my website. The other thing is LinkedIn, going back to so many resources, they have a newsletter that is, it used to be called, it was for Gen Z, and it was Keeping the Balance. And so then they had a TLDR moment, too long didn't read. And so they pivoted to a podcast. Now it's called Taking It Offline, right? And so there are so many resources out there that I did not have as a first gen college student. And then also when I was trying to get back into the workforce, I wish I would have had some of these. There's the Designing Your Life book. And then I wanted to point out the bottom right there, Emory alums, April Rennie has a great book about flux and your 8 superpowers. It really helps you think about your career in the time of flux. And then the Portfolio Life by Christina Wallace. And I'm very excited to be able to moderate their talk. Iram, is it October 30th at 4, I believe? And you can look out for the event announcement.
Yeah, we'll share the details in the newsletter.
Okay. So this is my gift to you. I love to curate resources. So I hope you will find this helpful. And so thinking about, I love books, podcasts, different things. My younger son has said, Mom, you really like those self-help books. And I said, you know what, Andrew, you know what it is? It's Eastern philosophy and Western philosophy, ancient wisdom repackaged as business psychology. That's what I say to Andrew. Okay, but think about your resources also more broadly. Who are the people around you? Who can provide information, inspiration, or insights? And I also would add another I, intentionally for you, being strategic about it. So some of you may recognize this from the talk from at the Hatchery, and it was building your personal board of directors, which I call your support squad. Okay. I won't go through everything because in the interest of time, but I do want to point out a few people. There's my husband. He's under the questioner. I say sometimes he does his job a little bit too well. His role, his role there. But so your mix of who's on your support squad might be different than mine. But you think about the people who give you energy, the people who lift you up while also keeping you grounded. Okay. In one of the previous books, the Prep, Push, Pivot, and also in Christina Wallace's The Life Portfolio, they talk about your support squad or personal board directors, and they talk about what types of roles that you might be interested in that. And I would say there, like some of the roles that you might think about is an ideator, a connector, which I have on mine, a challenger, a supporter, empathizer, inspirer, a questioner, as I have, a coach, a negotiator, and also a truth teller and a cheerleader, right? And so I also wanted to point out the person in the red there in the bottom left. That's Lisa Dupree. If anybody has graduated from Emory in the past 10 years from the undergrad, she was the director of the Health 123 program that everybody, so every student had to go through her class, or if you were a peer health partner. She and I are still friends. She just retired from Emory, and she invited me to be on her show, the Midlife Mojo podcast, and I got to talk about it. So we had been talking about this for a year. So again, at this point in my life, I want my autonomy to collaborate with people that I want to. Not saying that you can't do it in your current job, but it's really important, something that I value. Um, and um, and really going back to even my inner Michelle Yeoh, this is what I say too. I'm still trying to find ways in which I can express my authentic voice. And part of it is what I'm talking with you guys today. So any moments like this that I love. Okay. And some other people on my support squad are Emory alums, or Arba Casavoy in the bottom right. She's a triple eagle. She did her Emory degree Oxford. She did her public health degree and also Emory School of Medicine. She's awesome. And she did, she was at one point the face of WebMD. And for some of her skills building, she took an improv class because she did a lot of like Facebook Live events and everything. So there are many different creative ways that you can add to your resources and skill set. And then I also wanted to point out Felicia Warren there as the connector. She's been really great. And I met her at an alumni event at the CDC. Okay, so remember the first time I showed this and it was the quest? Well, now I hope that you can maybe flip the script and think about it more as a journey and more as a process to help you on your journey. And hopefully you will think about it as adventure waiting, progressive pivots, being intentional about it, and deliberate detours. And then know you're enough. You know who has introduced that concept to me, which I really love, is April Rennie, who wrote the book on flux. And she was actually on that support squad. I forgot to point that out. She was at the top right there. She talks about this is where you have to decide for yourself what your success metrics are, what you want in life, what do you value, and what will help you get there. And you have to also think about it holistically. It's not just through your job. We, as Lin-Manuel Miranda says, we contain multitudes. I think Walt Whitman might have said that before too. But anyways, I like that. He has it in a great book. It's called Good Day, Good Night. And I actually really love to give that book to some of my Emory alums that have graduated, and some that have been my mentees from the 1915 Scholars Program, which is a first-gen program at Emory. Okay. So this is another quote I'll leave you with. I really love it because it's really pointing out that it's discovery. You're going to be at different discovery phases, not just in early your career, but every time you pivot, it's going to be a different discovery phase. And so your life is the process of developing your work. And the meaning of life to me is giving your gift away, the generativity part. And so going back to our inner critics, everybody, we are high achieving overthinkers that you could keep yourself in your comfort zone there for a long time. And so the people who have successfully pivoted, you take small steps that add up to large leaps. And I hope today was an introduction of a framework of those strategic questions, and then also be able to apply that and surround yourself with your support squad. They are the sense makers. They are going to be the ones that, as you get more information, help you figure out what makes sense for you in the career stage and the life stage that you are. So I also said, remember the time-bound decisions? What's your timeline for change? And then work backwards from that. but be loosely tied to those plans too. So this is a way, if you wanted to look at more information on my website there, and if you could contact me through, there's some contact buttons there for just sending me an email. I would love to connect with you. And I wish you well in all of what you define as your next steps and career moves. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Agnes. That great content. Quick question on the support squad. How important is it to keep the roles, like the people and the roles, separate? Can you have one person overlap in different roles?
Yeah, you can have one person overlapping different roles as it was really hard when I was doing that because I was like, oh, but she's also a connector and also this. But actually in Christina Wallace's book, The Portfolio Life, she talks about orthogonal connections. That's more important. And that means not having anyone that just serves just one role. I mean, I'm sorry, that sounds like I'm contradicting myself. But what I mean is that think about like on LinkedIn when you have your first connection and then what's your second or third connection. That is where the networks, because when people invite you to connect with them, they're inviting you to their network too, right? And that's where you're going to get your opportunities in your job. The reality is that 70 to 80% of the roles out there are still found through networking, right? That has been my story, and that is most of the people that I talk to.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you guys again for joining us today and participating in today's session with the polls and interacting in the chat. I will share the list of curated resources along with a strategic questions for career clarity worksheet with you guys to help you get started on the next steps. We do encourage you to schedule a complimentary career session with Agnes for additional assistance. You will receive an email from me with more information about that, along with the link to complete a short survey. Please do take a few minutes to share your feedback with us. We do read those surveys, we share them with the coaches, and we use those to better improve the programs that we bring to you. Be sure to register for our next webinar, Leadership of the Future, a look back and ahead with Sarah Savella on October 2nd at 12 p.m. right here on Zoom. And on behalf of Emory Alumni Association, we want to thank you again for learning with us. See you guys next time. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. And please send me a LinkedIn request too. Okay. Take care. Bye.